Welcome to my new apartment. I have finally moved out on my own after 5 years of living with my parents because of health concerns. But yeah, 1 year ago I got a kidney transplant and I have been doing so well after that that I'm able to head out to my own apartment. And here we are. As you can see, the bookshelves have been set up. I have another bookshelf as well in my bedroom. So this is not everything, but yeah, here we are. I'm very excited, very excited. There's still boxes all around me, but it is the end of the month and I want to do a June reading wrap up before I throw myself into anything else. So let's get started and I'll go through the books in the order that I read them in the month of June, and I'll get to tell you all about the thoughts that I have. I'm going to actually scoot a little bit to the side so that I can show a picture of the books here. I don't have a lot of the physical copies with me because I was in the middle of a move for the entire month. So I think I have only a few of the physical copies lying around here, and I'm tired. My stomach hurts really bad today and I don't want to be fussing a bit. So it's gonna be really casual today. We're just going to be going over the 8 books, and I'm sure I'll miss something, but that's fine. The first book that I read for June was The Tainted Cup, which is the first book in the duology, I think, or the series. I'm not sure how many books there are, but the series, it's called Shadow of the Leviathan by Robert Jackson Bennett. And this is a really interesting book. I was pretty impressed with it. It is a murder mystery / high fantasy novel. So it has all of the aspects of a murder mystery, also having all of the aspects of a high fantasy novel. So it was quite impressive. I was really not sure how this would work because it's a bit ambitious in my mind to tackle both of these things at the same time. But Mr. Bennett did a great job. So let me try and explain what it's about. We have, it opens and we're in, what is it called? Deratona, I think? Delatona is the land. And we have our main character. His name is Dinios, or Din, and he is assistant to an investigator whose name is Anna. And he is investigating a murder that has happened in a very elaborate and opulent mansion. And so there is an imperial officer who has been killed, apparently, from just like a tree or a plant exploding out of his body, just like erupting from his chest cavity. So he has to collect these clues. And the way he does that is he has been magically enhanced. He's gone through a magical procedure, you could say, in order for him to have, he has perfect memory. He can have perfect recall of any situation. So that is how he got his job as assistant to Anna. Anna is our main investigative detective character, and she is an odd duck. She's just very eccentric. And so Din has to collect clues and information that she asks for, and she's demanding, and he has to literally be her eyes because she kind of refuses to leave her rooms, and she is always wearing a blindfold for no reason, really. She just wants it that way. So we have an interesting set here, an interesting pair. And it's very clearly but inspired by that sort of eccentric creative genius and their competent but clueless sidekick or assistant, second-hand man. And so I really liked this. I like this book a lot. There were a few things that gave me a few hiccups along the way. I wish I had connected with the characters a little bit more than I did. I felt like I almost could. I think this is a subjective thing on my part. Like, that's me personally didn't connect, but they definitely could be characters that you connect with very well. Another thing is sometimes I found myself really locked in and focused on the fantasy aspect, like the world building, the universe, the culture that's being expanded upon, and I kind of lost track in my mind, and I lost interest in the mystery investigative part of it, or vice versa, and I was super into the mystery and I wanted to know the clues, and I was following the mystery side of the plot, and so I didn't pay attention to some of the world building, or I didn't care as much, and so sometimes I would get a little bit lost and forget parts of it. So I would say if you're going to pick this up, which you should, it's not really a lazy read. That's a weird way to put it, but you are going to have to pay attention when you read this book, which for me, when I pick up a mystery book, usually it's for me to turn my brain off. I'm not the type of person who wants to solve the mystery or look for clues. I just want to be led along, and then in the end there's a twist and I'm like, oh my goodness, what? That was great. And so, and similarly, when I'm reading a fantasy, a lot of times I will also turn off my brain because I just let the world kind of build and I pay attention and I kind of wander through this new universe that's being presented to me. But I couldn't turn my brain off for this book because it was both of those things together. I needed to pay a little bit more attention. And that's just a note about my reading experience. It doesn't have any sort of say on how good the book was. It's neither here nor there. There also were a lot of characters, and the characters have to play almost two roles. They have the role of being a fantasy character and helping you understand the types of people in this world and their jobs and the political sway that they have, but they're also characters in a murder mystery plot. And so you have to kind of read their actions in that way as well. So there's a lot to keep track of. It was good. I am definitely going to pick up the second book. I didn't think I would until about maybe 75 to 80% of the way through, and I was like, oh no, yeah, like, although this mystery is going to wrap up in this novel, I'm still going to want to read the second one. So yeah, that was The Tainted Cup. Sorry if there's a slight camera shift. I had to make an intervention. There was a cat crisis. Birdie got stuck in the dresser drawers and was screaming for help. Anyway, yes, the second book that I read for the month of June was The Children by Melissa Albert. And I'm pretty sure this was a new release for June, if I remember correctly. And this is a book about Guinevere Sharp. She is our main character. And Guinevere kind of has two different personas, I suppose. And the first is her persona that the world sees, and then the persona that is the reality. So she grew up in an isolated house in the woods of Vermont, and she was the daughter of a famous and legendary children's book author, or like a middle grade or young adult book author. And she wrote a children's book series called The Ninth House, and it is super famous and super loved by everyone. Think like Harry Potter, like level. And what's interesting is that her mother, Edith Sharp, the author of this series, made the main characters of her books her two children. Like, made them look like them, they had the same names. She wrote them into the books. So people have this idea that they must have had this magical, fantastical, idyllic life in the woods with their charming mother. And then there's the reality. And the reality is that they were pretty neglected as kids. They grew up basically feral. They were always hungry, never taken care of. Their mother was very distant, kind of creepy. The house itself was creepy and decrepit. Their father developed mental health problems or issues. They were strangers there all the time, being weird. They had a strange childhood, and it wasn't idyllic. It was a little messed up. And then there was a tragic fire at the house, and their parents died, and it left them orphans, and it also left the book series unfinished. So that is, their past, and that is, there is one timeline of the book is their childhood, and the second timeline is Guinevere in present day. And Guinevere in present day kind of makes money from being this persona, the daughter of Edith Sharp. She is on a press tour for her own book, a memoir about her childhood that is obviously deeply untrue. But she's the face of this book series that everyone loves. And she's on the press tour and she finds out that her estranged brother, Ennis, who she absolutely loved as a child, they were super close, but now that she no longer talks to him, he is an artist and he is opening an art installation, and the name of the art installation is Mother. And she's very concerned that he is going to reveal some truths about their childhood and maybe some secrets that she might not want to be out there, because it could ruin her life. So we've got the plot line of their childhood, and you've got the plot line of the present day, of her trying to track down her brother. Now, this sounds like a good book. This, for the first half of the book, was pretty good. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot. The author can definitely set a scene, write a vibe. The scenes of their childhood were really good. The prose is quite rich, very lush, a little bit too descriptive at times. I think it really fit for the backstory of kind of like their strange childhood in the woods, because you have kind of like the viewpoint of a child sometimes is just like super saturated and everything seems very, very rich and lush. And so it worked for those parts, but for the present day timeline, it was just too much. It was too much description that was not necessary. Anyway, that's just writing style things. But I was so disappointed with this book. It was awful. I did not like this. It led you on. It made you think there was this grand mystery, and you thought that there was going to be a twist at the end, which I guess there was, but it was the most unsatisfactory thing ever. There was no character growth of our characters. Guinevere doesn't learn anything. She doesn't become a better person. Also, like 400 pages of the book is super focused on Ennis, the brother. And there's like this mystery of like, what is he doing? Who has he become? Like, why are these things going on? 400 freaking pages. And then the last 15 pages, he shows up and like, I guess reveals what was going on. But not in a good way. Not in a good way. Also, there was just way too many characters that didn't need to be there. They were all cool characters. Like there was this, like a caretaker of the house. He was like so cool. Like he was written so well at the very beginning. I thought, oh, for sure this is going to be like a pivotal character in the story. He had absolutely zero purpose. He did not have to be there at all. And all of those cool, mysterious things about him never came into play at all. I don't know why he was there. The plot twist was pointless. The ending was gross. I don't know how to explain it, but this was very bad. And unfortunately, my bad reading streak only went down from there. The next book that I read was Volatile Memory by Seth Hayden. This was a novella. It's pretty short, but it's one of two novellas. It's part of a set, and this was the biggest disappointment of the month for me. I was really looking forward to this one because I had read many blurbs that said its comp title was This Is How You Lose a Time War, which is one of my absolute favorite books. I love that book. And so to have that as the comp title, I was just really excited. But this book was trash. So let me tell you about it. We've got our main character, Willa. She is kind of like a space scavenger. The way she makes her money is she just like finds space junk and sells it. She's a trans character. She's a trans woman. And one day she's flying around on her junky ship and she hears like a call out that says like, hey, there's a super valuable mask on this planet, this piece of tech, come and get it, scavengers. And she's just like, okay, who sent out that call? But it's kind of like a race to see who can get this piece of tech. She gets it, she picks it up, she's like, oh my gosh, Buka, buku money for this one. I'm going to get paid big time. And what happens is when she touches the mask or the helmet, it's like a helmet, she is tapped into like a consciousness that has attached itself to this helmet. So in this world, you can wear what they call a mask, but what is essentially a helmet, and they're named after animals. So like Willa currently has a rabbit mask, and this rabbit mask changes her. Some of them can change features, like there's a character in this where he has like an ox mask and it makes him like physically stronger than he normally would be. But she has a rabbit mask. It makes her like better at flight, better at hiding, makes her more wary of predators, that sort of thing. So this new mask is a hawk mask. So she picks it up, but as soon as she touches it, she's connected to this consciousness of the woman who was wearing the mask when she died. Somehow it's been fused into the literal wiring of this mask. And so when Willa touches it, she can communicate with it. When she puts it on, the two consciousnesses almost become like one in her body. And this is a super cool concept. I really loved the idea of reading about just like the idea of like consciousness existing without a body, and do you need a body to be a person, and like that concept through the viewpoint of the trans experience I thought would be really cool. This was not executed well. Now, I do need to mention this book is written from the second person point of view. So that's like, you did this, you felt this, yada, yada, yada. Now, it's very hard to get into. Second person narrative is just, it's tough to read that perspective. But it's doable, and there's ways that it can be really well used. It was not used well in this situation. It really distanced me from the main character, when I think that the story itself being told from the point of view of a trans woman would have really benefited if I had more connection, not less. And the prose was incredibly choppy. It felt very juvenile, kind of like, almost felt like do you guys remember Tumblr? Maybe not, but like Tumblr back in the day when people would write like really crummy Tumblr stuff. That's what it read like for me. It was just not good. And I think that, I mean, Seth Hayden does have quite a following. I didn't think that he was like a bad writer, but this book was not good. You know, there's just a lot of problems. The themes of the book contradicted themselves, because it's supposed to be about Willa. She's the main character, and she's trans, and it's all about her journey of gaining like bodily autonomy, right? But Sable, who is the consciousness of the woman who was in the mask, like takes advantage of her and enters her body and controls her body, like Willa's body, without consent. And Willa's just kind of like, okay, I didn't like that, but it's fine, which I thought was totally weird. And by the end of the book, there's a lot more focus on kind of like two minds, one body, which I think could be done well, but it was not. It felt very icky. And let's talk about the romance. This is supposed to be a sapphic romance science fiction. And that is what How to Lose a Time War is. This was not a good romance. This romance was toxic. It was a manipulative relationship. It was controlling. And I don't mind reading that relationship in a book. I can read a toxic, manipulative, controlling relationship, and it can be done in an interesting way, and it can be developed in an interesting way. But this was marketed as and written to be something that you root for. It was never addressed as toxic. It was never implied that it was a toxic relationship. It was just there. And I didn't like that. I thought it was gross. I didn't want them to be together. I didn't want to be reading the book at all, honestly. The only way that I finished it is because it was so short, because it's a novella. So yeah, I don't recommend this at all, especially don't believe the comp title. It's not like Time War at all. So yeah, it was really sad. I gave this a 1 star, and I don't even remember the last time I gave a book a 1 star. I don't do that. I just don't believe in being that harsh on books usually, but this one was rough. Anyway, I tend to talk more about the books that I dislike because I have more thoughts on them, and unfortunately. But yeah, I don't recommend that one either. Moving on to the next book that I read in the month of June, and this was a fantastic, excellently beautiful book. That book was The Leaving Room by Amber McBride. And this was fantastic. I don't want to tell you too much of the synopsis because I believe that you will gain so much from it the less you know what it is about. It is a novel written in verse, so it is poetry, but it tells a narrative story. It is a novel, and it is about a young woman named Gospel, and Gospel is the keeper of the living room, and the living room is her living room specifically, because there is more than one living room. There are many of them. But hers specifically is a place where children, so people under the age of 17, I think it is, enter the living room, and she sits with them in their grief and helps them pass through and leave the room. But it is truly Gospel's story because she doesn't know how she got there or why she's there. She has so many questions about her own existence and her job, and there's like these rules about the living room, and she is really focused on like not breaking those rules, but also eventually she does not follow those rules, and her room is full of these little jars, and the jars are full of the memories of the people who have moved through the room. And she is learning about herself and about the other people and other people in the book by experiencing these memories. It was so well done. I think that the poetry was the perfect vessel to tell this story because the flow of Gospel's story was told so well through poetry, and because it's broken up on the page in a certain way, it makes you stop and reflect more than if you were just reading it block by block in a paragraph form. So it was a wonderful pacing. Also, Gospel and Melody's love story was so well done, so subtle, but so strong and so poignant. And the exploration of connection through memory and love and what happens between life and death. And like, is there a moment between life and death that we can capture? It was just so good. Also, this is the cover, but it is beautiful. I don't know who illustrated this cover, but it is a gorgeous book. And also, it was also queer as well. All 3 of these novels, The Tainted Cup, Volatile Memory, and The Leaving Room, were all queer. And also the next one that I read was also queer, and that was The Children was not queer. But the next one that I read was, and that is A Tip for the Hangman, and this was by Allison. No, was it Allison? Yes, Allison Epstein. This was a fun romp. This is a historical queer novel about the life and adventures of real life poet and playwright Christopher Marlowe. He's called Kit in this book, and it is mostly about his exploits as a spy for Queen Elizabeth. It's pretty widely regarded as a truth that Christopher Marlowe was a spy for Queen Elizabeth. They think that that's pretty much was true. And so this is kind of a telling of how that could have come about, how it happened. It was very good. I did not know much about Christopher Marlowe before reading this book. I knew that he was a contemporary of Shakespeare. He has many works that are obviously quite famous. I did not know that he was a gay man, or was believed to be a gay man, but he apparently had lovers throughout his life. His lover in this book, his partner in this book, I don't think is a real historical figure, but it is kind of like maybe a combination of various partners that Christopher Marlowe had in his real life. But yeah, we've got so much espionage. It's very good. And I just love the vibes of a queer historical novel. It's a good little nugget to just like have. Yes. So Christopher Marlowe, espionage, Queen Elizabeth, spy. It's great. I love the depiction of, I guess, trauma that this novel gives. So many times when you're reading a novel, you've got your main character and they go through some sort of big life event that should be, it should alter who they are as a person. You know, like I've lived many experiences. I don't want to say many traumatic experiences, but a handful of experiences that could be labeled as traumatic. And when you go through them, you don't completely heal from them and get back to where you were at square one. Like you might move through them and be okay in the end, but you're always going to be a changed person. And this book really understood that about Kit and the other people in his life that he interacts with. So like, he's a spy. He sees some terrible stuff. He's witness to some violence. And instead of just being a cold-hearted spy about it, where he's just like, well, that's the way life works, it really affects him and it changes him as a person, and he makes terrible decisions because of what he's experienced. He doesn't necessarily make good choices or learn how to be a better person by experiencing violence and trauma, and it haunts him. It haunts him, and it affects greatly the people in his life as well, his family, his partner, his friends. And so it was a really well done book. I think that Alison Epstein I'm going to add her to my list of authors where I'm going to start picking up more of her work. The next book that I read was The Midnight Train by Matt Haig. I actually borrowed this book from my mom. We did kind of like a book swap. She wanted to read a book that I had, and when I dropped it off at her house, she was like, I just bought this brand new book. Would you like to read it first? And I was like, sure. It's been on my list, I guess. I'll pick it up. And Matt Haig wrote The Midnight Library, which is one of the books that I picked up after not reading for quite a while. There's a point in my life where I was not reading any books, and it is mostly because of my health. I was so incredibly sick. I was bedridden and in constant pain and constantly also just like vomiting so much that I became malnourished. I was going through an emotionally abusive relationship and then a traumatic divorce. And so I just wasn't reading because my brain literally could not digest reality, much less a book. So I did not read for a while, and The Midnight Library was one of the books that I picked up when I was starting to feel a little bit better, and it really holds a special place in my heart because of that. And I related a lot to the main character, so I kind of was like, I loved that book. I'm not sure if it was a super, super fantastic book, and I'm not recommending it for everybody because I know that there are a lot of people out there that didn't like it, but I really liked it at the time. And so I picked up The Midnight Train, which is the second in kind of like the Midnight series, I guess. You don't have to read them in order by any means. They're ostensibly standalones, but they're set in the same universe. You know, the character from the first book is is also in the second book, but not in a big way. Anyway, The Midnight Train is about a man who, he's old, he's at the end of his life, he dies, and he is turned into, the way that you can move on to the afterlife is you have to relive your life. Your life kind of like flashes before your eyes, and he's turned into a ghost within his own life. So he's told, like, don't interfere with your life, because if you do, you'll mess it up, and then you won't be able to live happily ever after in the afterlife. So he's viewing his life, but he's viewing his life And he's realizing all of these things that he did wrong that made him ultimately really unhappy in the end. And he has to decide if he's going to step in and interfere with his past self or if he's just going to let it go. And it was really interesting. I liked it. I didn't love it as much as I love The Midnight Library, and it was fine. I didn't relate a lot to the main character in this one because he was just kind of like a middle-aged, straight white guy who got caught up in like the lies of capitalism, and he like worked really hard at his job and he forgot to appreciate his wife, and like, yeah. Those just aren't themes that interest me very much. My mom read it after me though, and she loved it. She liked it a lot. She really identified with the wife in the story, and the idea of having regrets about your life and wanting to live your life over and differently. So she really loved the book. I liked it. It was a solid 3.5. Matt Haig is very good at he's very good at pacing. He has a very good, solid writing style. I think that if you can connect with the main character, with the characters of the book, and he is able to pull on your heartstrings through that, you will have a much better time reading his books. But if he misses the mark with catching onto your emotions and catching onto that relatability, it's just going to be okay of an experience. And so it's kind of, for me, hit or miss with his books, but it was still really well written, well done. Okay, moving on to the next one. The next book that I read was called The Mask of the Red Mask? I don't know why I thought it was red. It's just Mask. The Mask of the Dear Woman. And this is by Laurie L. Dove. This is a basically murder mystery novel. It's just kind of like a murder thriller, which I don't typically rate very highly, but I still enjoy them from time to time. I really wanted to pick this one up because it was it focused on the murder and missing persons cases of the indigenous community, which I feel is not really breached upon as a subject very often in literature or even in our culture, and it is very concerning, and it's very important that we listen to those stories and also those realities, because it is a reality that so many indigenous women and children go missing or are murdered, and it just is never talked about. So I really wanted to pick up this book. I heard it was Own Voices, which technically it is. Laurie L. Dove is of indigenous heritage. I'm not sure if she knows which tribe, but she was adopted as a baby into a Mennonite white family. So Mennonites are super conservative, generally pretty religious culture. And so while it is Own Voices, she is an indigenous person. She didn't have the experience of growing up on a reservation or being part of a Native community. So when I was reading this book, it really felt like an average white woman writing a book about Native Americans. And it made me feel very uncomfortable. And I almost put it down because I was like, I don't think this is an Own Voices story. There's a lot of stereotypes that I thought were not great. Things like alcoholism and like some of the mythology just seemed a little trite. I don't know how to explain it. It just made me uncomfortable, and I can't really say, because I am a white woman, okay? I'm a white woman. I cannot tell you why this felt off, but it made me feel off. Now, when I stopped and I was like, I'm going to put this aside, I did research the author to see what was going on there. And she had made some comments about how important it was for her to write this book as a way for her to connect with her heritage and her culture. And it really filled this hole in her life. So I finished the book because of that. It was all right. It was good. Besides my like slight discomfort about it, I wouldn't really have anything to say. It was very tropey, which is kind of like how I feel about thrillers sometimes. It's very much like cut and dry, let's say. Girl goes missing. Our main character shows up. They're a little troubled, but they're really good at solving mysteries. Some shenanigans happen, and the mystery is solved. I didn't like the tropes of some of the characters. It was very much like the indigenous community against the racist, capitalist white people who want to frack the land for oil. Yeah, I don't know. It was okay. It was a solid 3, I guess. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it unless you are a really big thrillers and murder mystery person, in which case it's probably really good for you to read it. So yeah, that was The Mask of the Deer Woman. The last book that I read in June, I actually read when I was at my sister's house. I had to house sit or pet sit for her over the weekend. Her and my brother-in-law were traveling for work over the weekend, so I had to watch their 4 cute animals, their 2 dogs and 2 cats. So I was in their house for about 2 days, and they are both avid readers. My brother-in-law always has a book, and my sister actually went to school for English literature. She has a degree in it. She's an incredible analyst of literature, and they're always reading. Funnily enough, my brother-in-law reads more than she does now, just because she's super busy with working 2 jobs. But yeah, they're book lovers. So I perused their bookshelf because I know that they have excellent taste. And I picked up a short little book. It's not quite a novella. It was still a novel, but it was a shorter novel called The Bear. And this was by Andrew Krivak, I believe his name is. And I like this one. I guess you could call it magical realism, maybe? It was very mystical. And it is the story of the last 2 people on Earth ever. Something has happened. We don't know what. But they're the last humans. And it is a father and his daughter. And it is their story. They're on sort of like, he teaches her how to survive in this world. And how to be reliant upon nature and also resourceful. As you would imagine, kind of like a post-apocalyptic situation. They live in a cabin. They do the best that they can. He teaches her how to read and write. And he teaches her about the seasons and how to fish and how to hunt and all of this stuff. And then they're on kind of like a survival quest. They are going to the seashore to collect and make salt because they need salt for their life. And on this expedition, something happens, something tragic happens, and our main character, the little girl, is on her own. And she has to make her way back home, relying on the animals around her, most specifically a bear. That's, the titular bear in the title. And it is about the mystery of nature and relying on nature, but also the fight against nature as well. I really love the writing style of this. It felt very soft. It's very slow pace. Not too much happens, but it feels very weighty. So like when one small thing happens, it feels like it was a big deal, even if it's just like she caught a fish, but the way that she has to catch the fish and what it means to catch the fish and what the bear has told her about catching fish, what her dad has told her about catching fish, everything just has a certain weight to it. And it's very soft, but there are hard edges as well. I really love this. It was gentle. It was a great way to round off the month. and I was really thankful to find it on my sister and brother-in-law's shelf. And that is everything that I read in the month of June. I am so very excited to film more things in my new apartment, and I hope that you enjoyed me talking about these books. I hope you enjoyed me talking about these books. Please let me know what you are reading and what you think about it. I don't even care what type of book it is. Just talk to me about it, and maybe I'll pick it up. We'll see. I encourage you to pick up any of the books that I talked about here in this video, even the ones that I thought sucked. You should still pick them up if you thought that it sounded cool, because reading is cool. And yeah, I will see you in the next one.